Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss the efforts by Unite and Unison, huge unions, to coordinate strike action this autumn in order to bring the most pressure to bear in the search for decent pay. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, right from the start of the prospect of industrial action with the RMT first out the blocks, of the notable strikes anyway, I said that what will really be needed is coordinated action. The unions are quick to point out that we're not talking about sympathy strikes, they're illegal. It's more a case of where two or more groups of workers are going on strike over their various pay disputes. Why not coordinate the timing of the strikes in order to magnify the pressure? As Sharon Graham has said of Unite, it's a case of, say, you know, maybe it would bring maximum pressure if you had them striking at the same time, or staggering it. You know, and this is exactly right. And what has been obvious from the start, the bottom line is there isn't a particular problem for, say, rail workers or barristers or nurses or teachers or dock workers, refuse workers, postal workers, or anyone else looking at industrial action. They've all got one major problem in common. Some of them have their own little problems as well, but there's one major problem in common: their wages. They've been kept artificially low for a decade now, and at this point cannot meet a massively rising cost of basic living in this country. The latest now from polling is that a quarter of people are planning on just not having their heating on this winter. Now, I will say, not all of those will be because of the cost. There have been, in the last house that I rented, for example, I didn't have the central heating on over winter. That was largely because that particular home was quite well insulated and it was just me living there. So you don't need central heating on for one person. But for a lot of people, it is because of the cost. And if some of those people are, say, elderly or vulnerable in other ways, and they're going to do without it because they can't afford it, some are going to die. You know, it's very, very dodgy at the moment. And it's not just that workers are being asked to slog the guts out each day and then go back home with nothing left over for themselves once the bills are paid. That's bad enough. That's where it has been. The bills aren't getting paid. And I don't mean because of Don't Pay UK, the campaign to just cancel direct debits for the energy companies. I mean, the cost of energy is the main focus right now because it's completely out of whack. But the cost of fuel's way higher than last year. The cost of food is significantly higher than last year. The cost of clothes, of rents, higher than last year. But what isn't much higher than last year are the wages of millions of workers around the country. In fact, in real terms, their wages have been reduced. I go back to just before this energy crisis blew up in the public imagination. Reports were saying that people were going to food banks but asking only for food that didn't need to be cooked. Because those, the lowest decile, those on the lowest incomes, already couldn't afford the energy to cook. That was before all this blew up. With energy bills set to get way higher, the next couple of deciles are finding the same thing. People are increasingly finding that they have to try and do without energy completely, or as much as possible. But it's coming up to winter. For some, that means freezing to death in poorly insulated homes without the money to afford the gas. That is the reality. Some right-wing nut jobs are doing the rounds by reminding us, hey, in the old days, we used to just put on an extra jumper. Oh, we had frost on the inside of the windows and everything. And it's like, yeah, that's when you were young. You could survive the cold with a bit more insulation. But the elderly died. Old people died back then, and they died in much larger numbers than in modern times. Without major government action, those days are coming back. But even for those who could technically survive a winter without heating, why should they still suffer it? Why should hard-working people be told to do without lights or heating at home this winter? Why shouldn't their labours in one of the richest countries in the world at least earn them the right to live in a home that's warm and well lit, at the very least? And frankly, that is below the least that we should expect them to expect out of life. And many workers are demanding just this. The only way to make the rich sit up and take notice is to hit their profits. And this is best done through the coordinated withdrawal of labour to cause maximum harm to profits. The bigger the impact, the more people will push the government to actually do something. Because the thing is, unions have got no influence over the Conservative government, but the wealthy donors do. Cause a big enough hit to their profits, and all of a sudden paying their workers doesn't seem like such a bad idea after all. And this does need government involvement for no other reason that actually we're getting to a position where it's not possible for most workers to get an at-inflation pay rise for the next few years. Some major corporations, yeah, they could afford it, but most people work for small businesses. Well, many of these small businesses are going to go under themselves this winter. But the ones who can struggle on are not going to be able to do so by giving their workers a 20% pay rise. So the government's going to have to work to keep inflation down, because it is right that people should get an on-inflation at least pay rise. But it's not feasible to expect most businesses to be able to afford it when inflation's going to get too high. So the government have to reduce inflation. And in terms of physical powers, it's relatively easy to keep the cost of living under control. It's not as difficult as some may explain. France has shown the way here. Politically, of course, it's tricky for the Tories, as I've said before. They will do the bare minimum needed to prevent a crash in public polling. At this point, I'm not even sure they're all that bothered about winning the next election. I think most Tory MPs want to because their seat's on the line, for the gravy train. But I think, there might be some influential Tories that aren't bothered about Labour coming in for a bit. Letting them fall out of favour, let the Conservatives back in. Then they've got another 10 years of largesse by blaming all of their spending cuts on Labour before people start to realise that maybe it's the Tories that are the problem again. And the whole hideous cycle repeats. And if this is the case, and I really can't tell these days, naturally I just think to myself, well, of course Tories want to win. But then you look at their behaviour at the moment and think, well, maybe they don't. And the job of the unions is even harder if the Tories don't want to win. Because if the Tory leadership genuinely aren't bothered about winning the next election, or if they think there's no chance anyway, no matter what they do, they can easily stand firm. So the Trades Union Congress, it's meeting next month, a couple of weeks. Unite are proposing that the TUC help coordinate strike action amongst various groups to maximise the impact. Now, for me, that's a no-brainer. I'm not getting the strong impression that it will definitely go through, but for me, it's the sort of thing you need to make work. They should and surely would try and do everything that the law permits, obviously all within the law, in order to pressure the government. If it's agreed, then there's no reason why the action would need to wait particularly long. I don't know if they'd be able to launch anything major in time for the Tory Party conference. That might be too soon, but that would be a very good time to start if possible. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.